We did an exercise in class that's very much a more extended form of a brief exercise that I'll actually do before your very eyes here. Okay? Now I've got four pairs of lines labeled A, B, C, and D. And what I want to do is express first each of the shorter lines as a percent, the length of each of the shorter lines as a percent of the length of the longer. Now, that's something that I would have expected people would be able to do, but people, this was a 15 to 30 minute exercise that turned out to take almost 3 hours. And I'm a little surprised that these skills are as atrophied as they are. And this is simply because nobody asks students to do this sort of thing. Okay, so what is this line as the length of this line as a percent of this? Think about it. Okay, well, if it was 100%, it would be the same length. If it was 50%, how long would it be? Well, 50% would be half the length. It's less than 50%. Pretty clearly. So I'm going to say it's maybe 40%. So the small as a percent of the big would be 40. Okay? For B, what do you think the small is as a percent of the big? Is it more than 50%? Less than 50%? Is it close to 100% or 50%? Is it more than 100%? Well, clearly, the shorter line is less than 100% of the longer. If they were the same length, it would be 100%. This is less than 100%, so a reasonable estimate, I think, would be 70%. Now, and you can take a ruler. That's not what we did in class. I don't want people to do rulers. This is actually kind of a test of how well people can eyeball things. And the whole thing was designed so that we could see some subtle things about the design of an experiment, how learning proceeds, and a bunch of other things. Unfortunately, we had to go into a whole lot of explanation and pretty much dragging the whole idea of this percent thing out of people. And don't feel badly about that if you're in the class or if you're in the same boat, because we have very capable people in the class, and if you're in the same boat they're in, you're probably pretty capable. It's just surprising that people can't visually make this sort of estimate. Okay, well, another way to look at this is if this is a distance of 100 miles, then how many miles is this? Clearly more than 10 miles, clearly less than 1,000 miles, well, certainly less than 100 miles because the line is shorter. Is it more than half of 100 miles? Yeah, it looks like it's more than half. So that if this is 100 miles, this is 70. Does that make a fair amount of sense? Okay, maybe it does. Okay, now I'm using that analogy. See, if this is 100 miles, how many miles is this? Okay, I look at it and I think it's about 15 miles. You might have a different opinion. Okay, and what about here? Okay, if this is 100 miles, how long is this? Well, it looks to me, and I'm looking at it from kind of an angle, looks like it's just a little more than halfway, so I'm going to give it 60. So I think that's about 60%. This is about 60% of this. Now, without looking at these numbers, the next task was to estimate the large in terms of the small. Now there were about over 10 of these to estimate. I might remember what this percent was of this, and then I might actually use that to estimate what the big would be as a percent of small. We're not going to do that. We're going to just reset our minds, and we're going to visualize that this is 100% or 100 miles, okay? If that's 100%, then what's this? Well, it looks like this is more than twice as long as this, so that makes it more than 200%. Or if this is 100 miles, that's more than 200 miles. Is it a lot more than 200 miles? I don't think a lot more. I'm going to say maybe 230 miles. Okay, now if this is 100 miles or 100%, then how many miles or how many percent is this? Well, this is clearly less than twice as great, twice as long as this one. I'm going to say, in looking at it, it appears to me that that would be about 140 miles. Okay, or 140%. Okay, now when I look here and here, I'm seeing that looks to be about, this looks to be about 1/6 of this to me, maybe even 1/7. We'll say 1/6, so that would make this 600%. And then over here, well, if this is 100 miles, this is a little less than twice as long. Twice 100 would be 200, so twice 100% would be 200%, but it's a little less than that. I'm going to say 180%. Okay, so those are my estimates. Now, what the next task is I want to call this X, call this Y, and I want to graph Y versus X. Now, my graph is badly drawn. I'm looking at a bad angle, and I didn't really concentrate on what I was doing there. But it's pretty clear. And then, because you're going to have to do it both ways, I'm going to want to also be able to graph X versus Y. Okay, so let's see. To graph Y versus X, my Y scale is going to have to go all the way up to 600. So if I put 600 here, then I can subdivide that, divide that into half, and I got 300, and divide that into thirds, and I have 100, 200, then I have 400 and 500 here. Okay? Now, I've already made that scale a little bit too long, but let's say 600 is out about here. Okay, so let's just put 600 way out here. Half of that would be 300. Divide that into thirds, we have 100, 200, and then we'd have 400 and 500. Okay? That graph isn't particularly well constructed, but we'll live with it. Okay, then I want to graph Y versus X. So I'm going to want to graph 230, Y coordinate 230, that would be about here. Here's 200, here's 300, 230, 40. 40 would, this is 100 right here, 40 is way down here, so 230 is going to, 40 is going to go here. Okay? And 70, 140, well, 70 is a little closer to 100, 140 is about here. Yeah, a little higher than that, okay? Maybe there. 180, 60. Well, 60 is between 40 and 70, 180 is between here, so I'm going to have a point somewhere around here. And then, of course, we've got this off-the-wall point, 615. Now, 15 is way in here. If this is 100, 15 is in about here, so 600 is way up here. Now I'm going to graph X versus Y. That means I want to put my X coordinate on this axis and my Y on this axis, or my X number and my Y number. Okay, so I'm going to want to put 40 here and 230 out here. So I'm going to have a point maybe about here. And 70, 140. Okay, 70 is up here, 140 is about here. So I'm going to have this point. And then my other 2 points, 180, 60. So 180. What did I just do? And did I do something that makes no sense? No, I think I did all right. Okay. Okay, anyhow, I want 180 on this axis, 60 on this axis. So 180 is out around here, 60 is around here. These 3 points kind of mimic these 3 points. And 615 is going to be way out here. Then I can sketch a smooth curve through all those points.